Hello everyone and welcome back to Short Circuits. Today we're going to be taking yet another look at my Amiga 500 and it is getting very close to being done. What we are going to take a look at are a couple of items that I was able to acquire. Before we do that, I want to go ahead and point out a couple of things. One, I just spent a lot of time trying to get my white balance correct, my color balance and everything else. So this video may look a little dark on YouTube. I am going to try to fix that in post because YouTube will automatically darken videos. But hopefully you'll see what I see, and what I see is basically on camera what I see with my eyes. And I think that's better than an oversaturated, overly lit, low quality webcam video. So if this one comes out a little bit darker than normal, or perhaps a tiny bit washed out when I finally do edit everything, I do apologize. But what we're going to go ahead and do is take a look at a few things that I was able to purchase for my Amiga 500 that gets it much closer to done. Actually, so close to done that I think I might be able to call it provided. No, not really, because there is one more thing I got to do. But I was going to do this as an unboxing, and originally I had. However, OBS, which is what I'm using to record this, was recording in lossless, and for whatever reason, Sony Vegas, which is what I use to encode everything, can't read colored data from lossless video. So it all came out in black and white. Because of that, we are just going to do a showcase rather than an unboxing of a couple of things. The first thing I have here is a RGB to VGA connector. This little guy here is just a standard, I'm assuming it was a parallel port connector, and as you can see here, it was sliced off to be a 23-pin connector, which is what the RGB connector is for the Amiga. It does in fact fit, and it doesn't short out, which is, you know, a combination of good things. And then of course that converts to a buffered VGA connector, which will go to any VGA capable monitor or screen. The only downside is that screen has to accept an video input, excuse me, of at least, actually, not even at least, it has to accept a 15 kilohertz input. And I have no idea why that information just got away from me the way it did, but there it went. This came from amigastore.eu, which is a great place to find Amiga parts. They custom build, as you can see, and they send you stuff pretty quickly, and it's all really good stuff. Everything I've gotten so far has worked. Now, speaking of working, this little guy right here, as I said, only works on TVs or monitors that take a 15 kilohertz signal. For myself, I own exactly one television that does that, and that's my main TV, which, if I take a quick look, it is a Sharp Acuos. It is an older Sharp Acuos, circa 2011, 2012. It's about a $600 TV. Very nice TV at the time, still works. A little bit of blacking on the right-hand side from just wear and tear. So the screen is eventually going to die, which is going to make me sad, because it has all the inputs you will ever need. It had a gaming, what they refer to as a gaming chip, which allowed for syncing of audio and video from all the ports automatically, especially the HDMI ports, so that you never had to do the syncing stuff. If you guys remember playing the old games. I don't know why I'm talking about my TV now. Point being is it's the only one that I have that will allow for a 15 kilohertz signal. Because of that, this is useful to me, but not very useful to me. So I may have to S-video mod my Amiga, but until then, we do still have the composite out. And even though it is in black and white, which makes absolutely no sense to me since the Amiga 1000 has a full color composite out, but there it is. So this is an option, but it won't do for this recording because unless I point the camera at the TV, you will get a black and white signal on the input. So, a nice little device. I like it. It works temporarily. It wasn't very expensive. Next thing we're going to take a look at is this little guy right here. This is a Gotek drive. Gotek drive here is custom firmware for the Amiga, just Amiga 1000. I went with the LCD screen here on the side. Downside is my Amiga will most likely be jammed up against something, so this will not be functional for me. However, I do understand that with the Amiga, you can use the workbench to access the disk from a file manager, and then auto reboot to whatever ADF file that you want. So this is only needed if you're playing a game that has multiple disks and you need to up down on there. And again, this is a 3D printed case, which in fact is the only 3D and first 3D printed item I have ever owned in my life, which is kind of nice. It feels really weird and looks really cheap, but That's just my personal opinion. I know 3D prints are great; they work for almost everything. I just never really liked the aesthetic of them, how lined and like scratchy they are. But the great part about this Gotek is it's not open source, I don't think, but basically the guy who made the original Gotek, anyone who asks, hey, can I make this for this computer? He says yes. I've never seen anybody who's not open source, as far as I know, but is still open source in the fact that all you have to do is ask and permission will be granted. But the great part about that is, regardless of that, since this is mounted in a 3D printed case that's supposed to go into where the floppy drive currently is, and then has all the wires and everything connected to it, I can literally pop all the wires off, put this wherever I want, and then if I want to modify my case, I can move the buttons, the LEDs, everything. I can create my own mount, basically, if I want to. It would take a little bit of desoldering for this area, or bypass switches, whichever. I'd probably do bypasses before I did desoldering, just for the sake of sanity. Regardless of that, it's going in the way it is right now, simply so I have it in there. I also don't have a lot of discs for the Amiga. Again, I am a new Amiga owner. The box of discs I got with my Amiga 500 are mostly backups of, what's the word I'm looking for? Of programs, basic and C type program stuff, which would be great if any of them were Amos, and none of them are Amos, and that's what I want. So, not really important. But I may back them up eventually and then put them on here because I do have a few games there that I wouldn't mind playing on a consistent basis. Along with that, this does have a PC beeper speaker on it. This is to emulate the sounds of the disk drive. So when you say, hey, I want to run this disk, and it loads at the speed that the disk drive would load, so it's not a super fast speed, it does go bzz, bzz, bzz in order to let you know that, hey, I'm still working, which is a nice little touch and can be removed if it annoys you. Along with that, this is just an add-on that I got from my local shop. It's just a 64 gigabyte, very tiny USB memory stick. And the reason why I got this is this type is because when I put it in there, I wanted to have a low profile. I didn't want to have something sticking out really far, so I can like slide this up against something if I needed to. So that should work for what I want, I hope. So Gotek, that will go inside, hopefully. And then last and extremely not least, and I really wish I could have redone the unboxing for this little guy, but we're going to have to live with it the way it is my individual computer's ACA 500 Plus. This is my personal choice for accelerator cards for the Amiga 500. And the reason for that is because I had to do a lot of research on these, and I had to understand what an accelerator card did. And it turns out an accelerator card is simply a bypass or a throughput, or pass-through, not really a throughput, a bypass or a pass-through for either the CPU or some other function of the computer, usually multiple functions. In most cases, it's going to be a CPU upgrade, so your CPU runs faster. Sometimes it has additional options, but not always. And so when I finally figured that out and I went through all the different cards and what they did, they all offer some form of CPU upgrade. Usually upwards of 33 megahertz to 50 megahertz stability withstanding. But I like the ACA 500 Plus because, one, it's cheaper, costing about $130. Two, it comes out a lot faster. I don't know how, but it comes out a lot faster than some of the other ones. And three, when you order it, it's not out of stock by the time you click buy, which is not the same for other cards like the Wicker or the Vampire, which the Vampire is, I don't know what it does, but apparently it's made of solid gold, and it makes women flock to you because the thing costs like $300, almost $400, and everyone praises it, but no one really says what it does. But in my opinion, it does less than this does. The biggest difference I find with this card versus others, and this is one thing that a lot of people complain about, is it's a Zorro card, meaning that it fits onto the Zorro slot onto the side of the Amiga 500. Now, for me, that's not a problem, and the reason why is because I don't have a door for my Zorro slot. It's just sitting open. There's nothing in there. And I'm not worried about dust or anything, but I mean, if you're going to have it open anyway, you might as well use it. And so this little guy is actually a sidecar, what's referred to as a sidecar. It slides in, and it sits like that on your desk next to your Amiga, and of course can collect dust. And they make a case for it, and along with that, you can probably 3D print your own case if you really wanted to. But a lot of people don't like that extension. They want their Amiga to be nice and slim, so they go for internal options, and those internal options are slightly more expensive, sometimes requiring soldering, most of the time requiring you to pull the CPU out, put whatever chip it is in there, and then put the CPU on top of that, which is not hard, but is not something I really want to do. On top of that, this is also a pass-through card, and that's what this little edge connector here is for. It can allow you to attach a 1200, Amiga 1200 accelerator cards on top of this one. So not only do you get the A500 accelerator, which adds CPU speed, you can then add an A1200 card on there for capture card or modem or whatever you want to add, whatever accelerator card you can find that is an edge connector, you can click it right on there and you're good to go. On top of that, you get 2 CF cards. If we flip it over, it's got a little plexiglass case here to kind of hold them in place, but you get 2 CF card slots. The first CF card, which is the one on this side, is your boot card that acts like a hard drive for your Amiga 500, which I really enjoy. I mean, a basic CF card reader that you could get for any PC, XT machine, old DOS machine, old Windows, and probably up to 98 for swap file issues, would work fine. You can just insert it into your computer and you're good to go. But I like having access to my CF cards. I don't know why. I never take them out, but I like having access to them. So having one on the outside of my machine was really nice. And on top of that, you also have file transfers. Now, what's interesting about the Amiga is it was out about the same time as DOS and a little bit of Windows. And so you can transfer files via parallel port in certain programs and things like that. But this little guy right here offers you an additional solution. You have an aux card, which is a PC/Amiga format. Basically, you take a CF card from your PC, put files on it, ADF, whatever you want, plug it in here, and this little guy can read it and then transfer things onto your boot card, your hard drive. So it's a much easier way to transfer, in my opinion, than having a huge long cable that goes from one computer to the other, trying to get networking to work in any sort of way, shape, or form, or pulling the entire hard drive out and trying to do it that way. Or using WinUAE, which is also an option, but it just takes an extra step. So this is a lazy person's way of just adding a CF card, and you can just swap it in and out. And I really enjoy that feature. So this card does a lot of stuff and has a lot of extra features as well. Now you remember from my I want to say last couple videos, I inserted a 3.x ROM chip into my Amiga, which basically made it incompatible with everything. And that became a huge problem. This alleviates that problem. It also makes that purchase kind of pointless. Not really. What this does is it has both the 1.3 and 3. ROM already on the card. You plug it in and you can choose which one you want to use. It also has an incognito mode or an invisible mode where you can keep it plugged in but tell it to shut itself off, or at least act like it's not there, and it'll hide itself from your system. So I now have the ability to boot up in kernel 1.3, 3.1, and 3.x if I so choose, which are all really awesome. It also comes with Amiga OS for the 3.1 ROM, the latest version, whatever that version was, which it also can automatically install on your CF card as soon as you insert it. You insert it, you tell it to install, and you don't have to deal with the disks. If you want to deal with the disks, you can actually tell it to export the install, and I believe that's how it works, export the install to disks. So you have that as well. So you have Amiga OS, you have 2 different ROMs on there. You have CF card auto formatting and booting. You have a swappable CF card, an additional extension for A1200 expansion cards, or etc. And the only thing that people have ever complained about in this card for me is the fact that it uses the Zorro slot. So I jumped on this as quick as I could. And that was a lot of information for such a tiny little thing, I know, but there it is. Speaking of CF cards, I got this little guy right here. This is a SanDisk Ultra 16 gigabyte. I actually bought this originally to be used to install Windows 98 on it. But in order to do so, I would have needed a CF card reader for my Windows 98 PC, which I never bothered to buy, even though they're only like $6. I don't know why. And because of that, it's going to be used in here. Now, they do suggest, everybody suggests that you partition your drive at 4 gigabytes per thing. So this would technically, if it does multiple partitions, this would technically be 4 hard drives. And even if it's not, it's 16 gigs. I can use it right now. I can clone it later if I need to, and then just use a 4 gigabyte card if I can find one that's not $400, because apparently the lower you go, which is really weird with storage, the lower you go on these in storage size, the more expensive they become. 4 gigabyte being the cheapest and also the most generic, which is nice. It fits in most machines, and most machines other than DOS can read up to 4 gigs without a problem. 2 gigs and 1 gigs, they almost double in price. And then if you go 8 gigs, 16 gigs. 16 gigs is a little bit more expensive, but there's more space, so that's what you expect. All right, so with all that out of the way, I think the next thing we're going to do is install some things. And so for that, we're going to have to get the Amiga out, which I believe I stored back here somewhere. All right, now the first thing I could probably do, if I really, really felt like it, is have a sip of coffee. The first thing I could probably do is install my ACA 500 Plus. However, it is an external peripheral. It does go into the Zorro card, and I am going to have to take the case apart for the Gotek. Because of that, this will actually have to go in last. So that's going to wait on the side. Gotek is going to be our next little guy. And on top of that, remember how I couldn't fix my I couldn't fix my button. It was broken because I couldn't find my little clip. Told you guys as soon as I finished the video I was going to. And if you look right inside my little case here, there she be. If you guys are curious where I found it, I actually moved my entire setup into a different room, and I moved my little brown desk that was sitting there that you can see in the last video a little bit. And it was behind that. It was on the floor behind that. So there's no way in all of creation that I could have found this without rearranging the room it was in, which is what I did. So we are going to take the time. I just remembered how many screws were involved. We are going to take the time to glue this little guy back on, and even if it doesn't work or stick, hopefully it'll at least keep this guy down so he doesn't look like he's the one guy in the crowd who just can't sit down because he's super duper excited. So let's go ahead and get to taking this little guy apart. We'll get our Gotek in, we'll get our plug back in, and we'll see what we can see. Okay, so I got my tools, and I got my glue, and it took a while to find both. But we are back in business. Now again, I told you guys previously about these screws, which are force threaded. I don't know what the actual term for it is. They are, they cut their own grooves, they cut their own threads when they were originally inserted, and there are two sizes of them. So I have to do a couple of, yeah, so that's for that one. That'll work for that one. That'll work for that one, so that works for those three. And then I think I need this one for the back ones. Yep, that one for that one, and that one's too big, or too small, excuse me. And that one's too big, so that one's probably going to strip out as I take it out, but it be what it be. Now I'm doing this backwards. I'm going to explain a little bit. I'm doing this backwards for you guys in such a way because, one, the camera's not in my way, and two, I have a... yeah. I really need new screws for this. Not hex screws, just new screws. Like regular Phillips screws will do fine. I'll even take bolt head screws if they just don't strip when I'm trying to take them out. Anyway, I've been rearranging my recording area multiple ways, which is why you're now on this side. And then next time I record, you'll probably be somewhere else. And depending on how I set it up, there may be entirely new new desk involved, and that's simply because I'm trying to figure out my world, my space, how it's all going to go. And so I just wanted to give you that little, you know what, I'm not going to fight it. You stay there, that's your home now. I just want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up that I love consistency, I do, but there are times you have to just do stuff weird, and so I'm going to do stuff weird. And let me get the rest of this case off. Ta-da! Okay, now it's time to remove, well, everything. You have to kind of pull it all out in order to get this little guy out, including the screw that's in here. As I said, I'm going to be doing this in reverse for you guys, so I'm going to be acting like I can't see anything because I can't see anything. And I am going to have to move it around a little bit and get it out of shot. Screwdriver. Where? Magic. Ah, the magic of editing. One day I'll learn how to do it. See other people do it all the time. I'm thinking to myself, but not me. See, most people just fast forward through all this. Who knows, I might. But regardless of whether or not I'm going to, I do have to talk through it. Otherwise I get bored. Alright, keyboard is out, and I will be coming back little guy. Later date, but not well, later date as it were. Now, if I do fast forward it, those air quotes aren't going to make any sense. So let's go ahead and start pulling off our framework. I do have to rotate this around for myself. Okay, if I remember correctly, that should be all of them except for one screw, because why would it be? And now it's gone forever. Oh, that's one less thing I have to screw back in anyway. Alright. Okay. So we're back here again. We're gonna do this your way. Now, I wasn't... Howdy. I was informed that my cables might be too short for the Gotek drive. That was something that they did warn you. It says right there on the website, your cables may be too short for this drive. No, actually, I think I'll be okay, because there's an extra curve in this that actually goes underneath the drive. It might be a little tight, but it should be okay. I actually thought I had ordered a cable for this, but I guess I did not. That was my bad. Now, I don't know what kind of past burn-in Westchester. Nice, Westchester. Now, I don't know what kind of there are more screws on the back. Okay, here we go. Thank God I use a glass top desk. That's right. Yeah, it's going to be this screw here and possibly that screw there. I'm just going to unscrew this one first. I do not know what type of drive this is, but what I mean by that is I understand that the Amiga uses a yeah, that's gonna be a thing now. The Amiga uses classic 720K double-sided double density discs, which are not very common, especially. That was my cat. Apologies for that. He likes to, he decides that when I'm recording, it's time to play. And by play, I mean run back and forth very, very quickly and choke himself out on my headset cord, which I'm thankful he didn't unplug. Yeah, so I don't know what type of drive this is. I don't know if it's... I'm gonna go out of shot for a second while I do something stupid. I'm just gonna unscrew this from the bottom, because it's easier than doing it the other way. Okay, well, there we go. Came right out of there. And the feet came with it, except for this one is still attached. But anyway, I don't know if this is a special drive that only reads 720K discs. It doesn't. I've used double density or double-sided high density discs in this, and it works fine. I understand their lifespan is a lot shorter when you try to record them with a 720K high density, but they work. So it can read them. So I don't know if this is just a generic floppy drive or if it's something super special that was built specifically for the Amiga. Either way, I'm going to keep it. So if somebody has information on that, go ahead and throw it down in the comments, and I'd be happy to read it and go, oh, okay. Pardon my blow, little goo. Ugh. I just grabbed a rag, nothing spectacular, it's just dust. I don't think it's caked in there, and I don't think I really need to do much with the whole Windex or clean or whatever. I mean, I probably should, considering how dirty it is throughout this entire thing now that I look at it. But just a quick wipe down I think is good enough for now. Because again, I don't think this is the last time I'm going to be opening this little guy. As much as I'd like that to be the case. Alright, so I have to mount my Gotek now. The Gotek looks like it is pre-mounted back here, and that this does not have a... Sorry, you guys can't see what I'm doing. Pre-mounted back here, so it has the same bolts that this one has stuck in the bottom, and then this one here. So I think this is supposed to stay, and those two are supposed to come out. And if I'm right, I just take this and I set it. And it's not going to go down because the screw's in the way, but if I'm right, it should once I screw that in, sit flush. Should. Once, yeah. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to pull this little guy out of shot. And I'm just going to start spinning this little screw around and hoping it'll stick in this 3D printed hole. So what I'm doing is I put bolt, screwdriver, come up from underneath with this little guy. And I'd adjust that camera, but I don't want to. So instead, what I'm going to do is slide this back out of shot. And probably cut this whole part out. Aha! Heard that little pop. Okay, there's my screw. There's my bolt. I can do this by hand in shot, which was the better idea because I started to thread this and it started to thread sideways. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to thread this properly into the plastic so it goes in straight this time. Okay, that's actually pretty flush. It's a little off on that end, but it's pretty flush. Now hopefully, if I set this little guy down without any screws in it, it should land flush across the board. Oh. Actually, no, that was my bad. It doesn't want any... I just threaded that for no reason, because it doesn't want any of these in there, apparently. Well, it's threaded now, and the screw that is in the bottom should thread in there perfectly fine. Why is it too large? And yeah, it didn't want threading at all. It was already pre-cut for that without the pins on it. So that pin was not supposed to come out from underneath the drive. So there's that, and if I'm right, oh boy, okay, it's a little tight because it's been bent for, 20 years? Okay, once it's screwed in, it'll hold. Right now, okay, that fits. Now the bigger, so the power supply cord is long enough. Oh yeah, that's I can literally over the top of it, so that is way close enough without a problem. Alrighty, so that, I'm just going to say it's as screwed in as it's going to be screwed in because simply I screwed it in, I did it, and we'll see how, oh yeah, I don't have to really jump up and down on that very much. It's nice and tight. Alright, my power supply cord is again just almost too short, but it's not, and my I believe this is a 44 pin. I'm not going to count. 38 or 44, I forget. Just count and double it. So I got to do count across and multiply by 2. But that's the Gotek installed. Now I'd love to put... Well, I can put the shield back on. I can put the shield back on because the keyboard goes over that. So let's go ahead and put the shield back on. I don't know. It feels like it's not straight right here. I haven't had a short yet, so I'm not concerned about it, but I could have a short, so I'm concerned about it. Huh. Now that is a problem that I did not think about. That is the screw that screws into the side of the floppy drive, which, of course, I don't need anymore because there's no screw hole here. If you look, it's just a notch and then an angular cut. One downside to that is my grounding wire, which I have to assume that that's exactly what this is a grounding wire. I don't know where my grounding wire goes now. I'm assuming that they took that into account, and somewhere on them internets I will find a solution to this, but until that happens I'm going to keep screwing in this top plate, and I'll take a look at it in a minute, because I do still have to take the whole keyboard apart before I put it back at all. And who knows, I may see something incredibly intelligent like, well, you don't need a grounding wire. And I'm like, okay. Probably not a good idea to put a screw with the wrong tip in a spot where I can't get an angle grinder in to get it out later. Actually, you know what? That's a genius maneuver. Let's just go ahead and back that little guy out, because I do not like how hard it was to get it in there. I don't like how violent it was coming out. Okay, now if I have to angle grind that one out, it'll be a lot easier. Okay, so that out of the way, that part is done. Now comes the fun part. Oh dear. Oh. Almost lost it again. Yeah. That's how organized I am.